Tell me about the worst date you've ever been on.
So I went on this date 2 years ago in Boston with this girl, hitting it off, having a great time. So I'm paying for the check, and we're going to the movies after. So all of a sudden, this guy sits down at the table with us, and she's pale as a ghost. So I went to the guy, I'm like, hey man, can I help you? She's like, oh, that's my wife. I said, well, what? Wife? And he goes, yeah. I look at her and I go, is that your husband? So she's like, like, just trying to make some excuse. Best part of all, sees something running the corner of my eye. It's her daughter. She jumped on her lap. Mommy. And I was like, I looked at her, I'm like, how long you guys been married for? 7 years. 7 years. So she lied that she was married. Married for 7 years and had a kid. So I'm just sitting there at the restaurant like, wow, this is like a Dr. Phil episode. Like for Pat too.
Put a finger down if you dated this guy who took you to Barnes & Noble on your first date, so you thought that was really sweet. And then a few dates later, he flew you on his private jet, which threw you off guard. And then a few dates later, he took you to his 300-foot yacht, which really threw you off guard. And then a few dates later, he got you a personal driver and a personal assistant who wanted to know who you were 24 hours a day, but you thought it was for safety. You didn't question it because you felt like Cinderella and you felt really grateful. And then a few dates later, you got an email from an angry girl claiming to be his fiance. When you asked him about it, he said she was crazy and that it wasn't true, but you went with your gut and you broke up with him anyway because you didn't trust him. And then 3 months later, an FBI agent calls and says you need to come in for questioning and that they have something they have to tell me. And so you find out from an FBI agent that this man had been dating you and 10 other women, and he had put a GPS tracker on your car. He had hired someone to photograph you 24 hours a day and log everywhere you went, and he put a camera in your apartment without you knowing, and now he's going to jail for a really long time.
So every time I picked it up, he'd like physically take it out of my hand and say, you're not listening while I talk to you if you're drinking that. All he did was talk about himself, show me his shirtless modeling shots, and then eventually he went into his life story. He told me he literally just got out of rehab 2 days ago, was looking to find a nice smart girl like me, even though I never said anything, to get him back on the right track. I freaked out. I'm 17, he's like 16, so I called my friends to get me out of there. As soon as I leave, he texts me that he loves me. He's going to tell his mom about me. He's going to tell all his friends about me, his photographer about me. I freaked out. I blocked him. He kept FaceTiming me from different numbers, so eventually I picked up to get him to stop. And on the FaceTime, he called me several racial slurs, made fun of my friend's last name. He said he only liked me for the color of my skin, said if I didn't sleep with him within 8 months, he would just go for it. And now he's signed to a major modeling agency, has fan accounts, and he does music videos. So yeah.
500 pounds. But I gave him a chance, because I'm not judgmental. So he took me to CiCi's Pizza. We walk in, everybody knows him by name. They're high-fiving him and shit. We sit down. This motherfucker ate 8 plates of pizza before they brought him his usual, which was 2 more pizzas, which he proceeded to fold double, and then he wrapped them up in a napkin, and he put them down his pants, and he was putting them in his pocket. He said he was taking pizza home to his grandma who didn't have money for groceries. We went back to his house, and his grandma was outside, and I said, hey, he's got your food. She said, honey, his parents have had to refinance their house to feed his big ass. You need to run like hell now. Needless to say, that was the first and the last date. Worst date ever.
Shower, shave, all that good stuff. I'm almost ready to leave. He texts me asking if there's anything special that I want to drink. He's picking up some champagne and I'm like, oh, you fancy. But then he texts me asking if I can bring my camera. My nice camera. Why? It's not what you're thinking. No, then he proceeds to say, well, I'm trying out for The Bachelorette and I want to have some professional photos. What? Oh my God, you're so funny. Get in my car, head to his place. I get out of the car, he greets me, gives me a big kiss. He's got a bouquet of flowers. We start walking to the front door and then he goes, but wait, where's your camera? Turns out he was not kidding. Boy really did want to try out for The Bachelorette and even made it on the show, but I turned right back around into my car and went home.
Hello, darlings. I look like a vampire from Twilight. Renesmee, who? Let's talk about Tinder and how I was very unsuccessful with that. So this guy and I are just flirting, chit-chatting, having a good time, seeing where things go. And he's like, you seem really chill. Let's go on a date. And I was like, what? Me? Little old me? You want to go on a date with me? I was like, if you insist. Also, he didn't know I was trans, which is fine. Because, darlings, I did not know where things were going. It's okay. So we're on our date, enjoying our time, eating some food, enjoying the scenery. All of a sudden, his phone starts blowing up. He's getting text messages, phone calls, and I'm like, do you need to get that, sir? It seems important. He's like, no, it's just my ex-girlfriend, no big deal. I was like, okay, cool. So later that night, he reads those messages that the girlfriend sent, and they were, messages exposing me as a trans person, calling me a chick with a dick, saying he's gay for going out with me, tells me to get the fuck out of the car, and if I don't get out fast enough, he will beat the shit out of me and kill me.
Last night, I went on the weirdest date ever. I took her to this Chinese restaurant that had a sushi bar, and when I ordered sushi, this girl goes, she like fake gagged in front of the server, and I'm like, what, you don't like sushi? And she goes, no, I hate sushi. I was like, okay, so I took off the sushi and I ordered this lo mein dish. 3 separate times throughout the meal, this girl keeps bringing up the sushi. She's like, oh, I just really don't like it, like it's fish, that's really gross. Like, you're not gonna believe this next part. So we finish our meal, and as we're about to leave, she's like, oh, it's raining, I have to wait. And I was like, no, I have an umbrella. And she's like, no, I just really rather wait. So we wait 20 minutes, and finally I'm like, yo, I'll drive the car to the curb and pick you up. And she said, no, I really can't get wet. And I go, why can't you get wet? This girl goes, if I get wet, my mermaid tail will come out. So the reason she didn't like sushi is because she's half fish. She's a mermaid. When I tell you I politely excused myself to go to the bathroom, snuck out the back door, and drove myself home, that's not a lie.
First of all, ew. Second of all, ew.
All right, worst date from a dating app ever. So me and this girl were at a pizza place. My first story at that point was to break the ice about how I just recently slipped on a doormat, put my arm through a door, and put it through the window. And I got this real nice scar, which at that point was not healed. So I was telling her about that, and she gets very serious, and she's like, I didn't want to have to talk about this. And she pushes up her sleeves, and her arms are totally covered in scars. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Why? And she's like, oh, I'm not depressed or anything. The girl I dated last told me that I should kill myself. And I said, bitch, you think I won't? And then I tried. And I was like, holy shit, this girl's crazy. I'd so much rather you be depressed. I can get around that. What? So I try and change the subject really quick, and I ask her about her birthday. And then she asks me about my birthday. And when I tell her, she goes, ugh, you're a Pisces? You're going to do something terrible to me. I'm like, yes, I'm never going to call you again.
Story time of the second worst date I've ever been on. So my boyfriend at the time wanted to take me on a nice dinner date. We get dressed up, I drove because, I like control of my life. We're on the highway and suddenly traffic starts slowing down and I unfortunately get stopped at what looks like a car accident. I look to my left, a dead body laying face down. That part's important. As I look to my left, I start shaking and say to my boyfriend at the time, that person has no legs. His demented brain, because he was in the military, laughs and goes, ha! That person has no head either. I look at him almost disappointed because there was no sympathy for me for someone who's never seen anything like that. So I continue driving hysterically, and we rain checked that dinner date. Now, when I get home and I'm telling my parents, still hysterical by the way, my sister, now I didn't find this funny at the time, but I do now, she says word for word, and I quote, how was the body laying face down if it had no head?
Let me tell you about one of the worst dates I have ever been on, but before I get into it, please realize I was dating this boy at this point. So we made plans that we were going to go grocery shopping, we were going to cook dinner together, we were going to have a lovely night in, and here's what happened. We got groceries, I start cooking dinner, he leaves, he goes in the living room, and he just starts talking to his fucking roommate for the whole time, and I cook dinner by myself in silence. And then after, he's like, oh, I'm so tired, I work the night shift. Ugh. So I sarcastically said, oh, I guess I'll just clean up the kitchen by myself. He goes, thanks, babe, and then goes the fuck to sleep. I was so pissed off that I was cleaning this guy's kitchen. His house, not even my house. I was cleaning his kitchen after I cooked a full meal, that I drank an entire bottle of wine, and I made his roommate cinnamon buns, and I've never felt more worthless in my life. So,
bitch, let me tell you about the best and the worst date that I've ever been on. It's the same date. I had just turned 21, ready for some fun. And you know how you be having people on your Snapchat when we used to use that shit, and you don't know how they got there. Who are you? Well, I was looking at my snaps, and I was like, who is this man? This man kind of fine. And he used to be swiping up on my story, so we started talking, and then we started texting. Come to find out, he lives in Atlanta. He got hurt at work, so he got a settlement check or some shit like that. Workers' comp, bitch. He was sitting on a lump sum and wanted to take me out. Honestly, he wanted to do more than take me out. This man was talking about me quitting my job and just letting him take care of me. That was honestly red flag number 1. But nevertheless, I decided to give it a try. He ended up coming to my city, staying the night, and we went to Charlotte the next morning for a little day trip. That's when I figured out that he was probably a serial killer.
My worst date ever was in 2015. I drove an hour to pick her up. I waited outside for 15 minutes in the rain waiting for her to come out. Her younger brother wiped his pecker across the glass door while I waited, which was weird. When she finally came out, she played Angry Birds in the passenger seat of my car all the way to the restaurant and said nothing the entire way. When we got to the restaurant, she ordered the number 2 family style, which as it turned out was a poo-poo platter for 8. When I confronted her about it, she very loudly accused me of fat shaming when I'm pretty sure we both know she was just going to bring it home and feed her siblings. When we got out of there, it took her 4 boxes of leftovers to leave, and she dumped one of them all over my car. Didn't even bother to clean it up. When we got back to her house, I was getting ready to leave, and she asked, "Are you going to kiss me goodnight?" To which I said no, kind of politely, and pissed, she sicked her very vicious German Shepherd on me, which bit me in the calf. On the way home, I got a flat tire, and I'm pretty sure it was from her because there were 3 roofing nails straight up in a row.
This is the worst night of my life. My date just texted me to come outside and I'm not even ready. I'm wearing this dress that I don't even like and I'm stuck in it and the zipper won't come down and I'm home alone and no one's here to unzip my dress, so I'm gonna go ask him to unzip my dress. This is so embarrassing. Oh my god, he's here. What the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm gonna have to do it. I'm just gonna have to ask him to unzip me. So embarrassing.
Hey, beautiful.
Hey, do you think you can help me with my dress? My zipper is stuck, and I didn't plan on wearing this dress. I really need your help. This is so embarrassing, but can you please come?
Has anyone else's mom made them instantly popular in high school? Because this one time, I had gotten asked out by this guy on the soccer team to my senior homecoming. My mom had been teaching at my high school for 2 years, so she knew who this kid was, and she was like super stoked. The dance was super fun, everything was a good time. But I find out that the guys had made a bet to see who would kiss their dates. And so I was like a little stressed out, but it was fine because he didn't kiss me. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But then he asked me on a second date and I was like, oh, fun. So I have this thing about ice skating. I hate ice skating with my entire being. Literally hate it so much. So he picks me up, he won't tell me where we're going. We go ice skating. But the date was so bad because I was so uncomfortable because I hate ice skating that, like, of course he didn't kiss me. But I go home and I tell my mom and I'm like, this guy still didn't kiss me. And she was like, oh, that's so dumb. I was like, yeah, weird. So I tell my mom thinking I can trust her, and she calls him out in front of her entire class. She was like, so Chris, why didn't you kiss Sarah? And to someone who was literally a nobody in high school, I was pissed. I flew under the radar. No one knew who I was. All of a sudden, my phone was blowing up. People were like, oh my gosh, are you and Chris a thing? Have you guys hung out all the time? What's going on? I'm just sitting here like, we just had a bad date. I don't know what's happening. So then he calls me and he was like, hey, so I didn't know you wanted me to kiss you. And I was like, I didn't really, like, I don't know. And he was like, well, your mom said something about it. Mom! So I was so upset, but shortly following, my popularity skyrocketed. So I guess I have my mom to thank for becoming slightly more popular than being a loser my senior year of high school. The end.
On one of my first dates ever, I picked this girl up. I'm 18. She's maybe a couple years older. She gets in the car and she's immediately like, do you always pick strangers up like this? I was like, I thought this was a date. You have to start somewhere. And she's like, you shouldn't just trust strangers. I could be a psychopath. And I'm like, I don't think you're a psychopath. Then this woman tells me she used to buy hamsters. She used to buy hamsters for her cat in hopes that her cat would eat them so she could watch. Because her cat was the only being that she could feel empathy for.
Here, what's your worst date experience?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't really been on many. We don't talk about that. The worst one I would have to say was a prom date question because I didn't know it was happening, and it happened, and I did not want to go. I had to say yes.
Damn, you had to say yes?
I was being nice.
Shit. Can I be your worst date experience?
Depends. Where are we going?
Anywhere that makes it terrible.
All right, sure.
Hey, my last Tinder date was running a little bit late. Plus some bitch was parking in 2 parking spots out front. Don't worry, I found a handicap spot out back. We're totally fine. Oh, bread. Hey, can I get a Bud Light? Thank you. Are you okay? You look kind of tired. You should smile.
Last year, I went to this fancy fundraiser event at a museum with my friend. I get all done up for the event. I'm wearing a gown, and I'm thinking maybe I'm gonna meet some beautiful museum-going, art-appreciating man. So I get to the event with my friend, and I'm feeling cute. I'm mingling, taking advantage of the free champagne, and this very young, fine gentleman approaches me. We chat for like 10 minutes. He tells me his name is Greg. I happen to mention where I work, but we don't exchange numbers. He's very charming, though. I'm like, okay, I hope I see that person again. Anyway, the night carries on. 30 minutes later, another guy approaches me. He also tells me his name is Greg, but this Greg is not as cute. And he's also incredibly boring. We don't have any sort of spark. We talk for like 5 minutes. During those 5 minutes, he happens to mention to me that he doesn't believe in climate change. I'm like, okay, Greg, buddy, pal, sport, I gotta go. But also during our conversation, he asks me where I work and I tell him. So I've met 2 men at this point and they're both Gregs. On Monday, I'm at work and our office secretary tells me that a man named Greg left a message for me on the main line, but I have no idea which Greg it is. In the voicemail, he leaves his number and tells me to call him back. And from his voice, I really can't tell which Greg it is. So I call back. He's like, I'm so excited you called back. He asks if I want to come to his friend's birthday party with him on Friday. It's at a bar at Fenway Park in Boston, and he says it will be super fun. I'm thinking, okay, there's a 50% chance it's the love of my life on the other line, but there's also a 50% chance I'm about to say yes to a date to a man who doesn't believe in climate change, so. But honestly, this sounds like fun Greg because I feel like fun Greg would have fun friends who celebrate their birthdays at bars. So I say yes to the date. Fast forward to Friday night, I walk into the bar and literally the first person I see is boring Greg. I'm like, he's like, it's so good to see you. I'm like, same. I am so pumped to see you. And then I hear someone say my name behind me and I turn around and it is the other Greg. Hot, cool Greg. I'm like, what? And I don't know which one invited me to the bar. So I'm like, oh, hey Greg, have you met Greg? So the three of us are talking for like 20 minutes and I'm thinking, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to figure out which of these men I'm on a date with. So I strategize. So I decide that the only way I can figure out which one I'm on a date with is if I call the Greg whose contact I have saved in my phone, because the Greg who invited me gave me his number. But I obviously can't call right in front of them. So I tell them that I have to go to the bathroom. And then I hide around the corner of the bar and I call the Greg I have saved in my phone. And then I'm not kidding you, both of them look at their phones at the same time. So I'm just like, you know what? F it. And I leave. Because this was truly the most stressful date of my life. And even if it was hot Greg who invited me, the universe was telling me this was not going to work out. And I never heard from Greg, either one of them.